It's theairnetwork.net and time for the John Harris Podcast. And now, here's John Harris.
Hey, welcome to the John Harris Podcast. I'm John Harris, joined today by no one in this United States knows more about the NFL, the college draft, than Dave T. Thomas. Dave T. Thomas, how are you, my man?
Hey, coming back again for another year over there. You know what I say, heaven doesn't want me, hell's afraid I take over, and if I got down the hill, I'd have one hell of a football team. And they probably be guys that never made it to the combines.
Look, man, I want you to tell the listeners you can do it better than I can do, because I know you've been involved with so much. 5 decades. This guy was doing scouting with Al Davis as a teenager. Just tell the listeners what you're doing right now. Let's kind of do a little history lesson and tell the folks a little bit about your career.
Well, actually, I walked away from the game in September after my wife's 6-year battle from cancer came to a close. It sort of put me in perspective that, hey, listen, there's got to be something out there in life. Yes, it was. It was called football. After about a month or so of just chilling out, just letting my brain ease, I got back into this thing because you know what it is. Once you get that bug biting you, man, there's no cure for the problem. My best bet out there was to go back out there and do what I do best, and that's evaluate. That's research. That gives teams every bit of information they need on the players. Now, I had a little twist this year, John, that now, I've been pretty much known over the years for the college. But right. I had teams like the Pats, teams like the Giants contacted me and said, listen, we got veteran free agency coming up. What kind of magic could you bring on the board with the veterans that are out there? I said, let me see. I actually enjoy researching the veterans more than I enjoy researching the college kids. College kids are easy peasy. You pick up the phone, you call the sports information director. If you need game films or anything, boom, they're on your door the next day. In the NFL, let me tell you one thing, especially statistically wise, it is so skewered. It's like the NFL is turned themselves into a fantasy franchise. There's a lack of concern with offensive linemen out there. If you look around the league right now, it's like everybody's screaming, brother, you got a great pass protector. Offensive linemen coming in the league right now, they're not taught to use their hands. They're not taught the proper way of moving their feet. That's why it takes 2, 3, 4 years before these offensive linemen start developing. What I'm seeing right now, though, John, is that the NFL seems to be taking the approach that when you step in our league, you better be prepared. If not, we're going to replace you immediately. Down at college, they're not doing a great job as they've done in the past of teaching these kids. And you've seen what's gone on with these underclassmen coming out. Over 100 last year, close to over 100 again this year. Sooner or later, the well's going to run dry, John.
So, Dave, before the Pats and Giants, tell the listeners a little bit. You were pretty much responsible for scouting for almost every NFL team. You put out the NFL draft report every year. That
the book that the
read?
NFL kicked out. The NFL has kicked out my book from 1968 straight on through to the 2015 draft. Last year was my first year that I didn't give the book out to the general public. The whole thing came down to was age 13. I'm out in Thousand Oaks, California, sitting there with Al Davis and his scouts. Al was a good friend of my uncle. I start laughing, looking at the scouts pulling up newspaper clippings. He tells me, you could do a better job, go ahead and do it. 1968, I show up with a 4,000-page handwritten report in my hands. That was history for me. I mean, you know what, like I told my grandmother says, why are you doing this? You got 2 college degrees. I says, Nan, I'm smart enough to know how to make a lot of money in a stupid man's game.
The man
no, not for anything, John. If you look around today, my biggest bone to pick with teams today is they don't educate their scouts right. I cannot tell you how many times I will go on campus now and see a scout breeze in and breeze out. I remember when I used to spend 2, 3, 4 days on campus making sure that I saw everything, saw practices. I need to see these habits. You know what's going on right now up in Indianapolis? There's over 800 NFL personnel up there, and out of that 800 personnel, I would say about 750 of them have never seen that ball player at all. Not even on game film. Now, all of a sudden, what's going to happen? They're going to start getting hot and heavy over the girl on the dance floor. I'm sorry, I can't look at a guy in 3, 4 days in his underwear and say that's the guy that's going to win for my franchise.
What are you looking at this week? What should we, the fans, be looking at this week? Is there a story up there? Is there a story? I mean, other than all these guys there, is there something in particular that you're looking at up there?
Yeah, because we're looking at a draft that probably has the worst quarterback crop in ages. And when you don't have a quarterback that could be labeled franchise quarterback, you got that first, the second, the third pick in the draft. It's greatly devaluated. I mean, you look at right now, all of a sudden John Lynch shows up at San Francisco. Hey, anybody want number 2? Now you got Cleveland talking about, oh, we're going to take Garrett. Now all of a sudden is, hey, anybody want number 1? I think what you're seeing with the team, it goes back to the Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young song. If you can't be with the one you love the one you're with. If you can't find a franchise quarterback in this draft, just take any quarterback whatsoever. You know, they talk about the kid at North Carolina. They talk about Watson. Honestly, I think the Notre Dame kid's going to be the first quarterback off the board. And I think in the second and third round, that's where you're going to find the best quarterbacks in this draft. If I got to take any quarterback, John, I'm taking Mahomes down at Texas Tech. If he's gone off the board, I'm running out to California. I'm getting that big kid out there, man, Davis Webb. These are 2 quarterbacks that I could win in the league with.
Do any of these quarterbacks have first-round grades? Do you have any of them with first-round grades?
No, but I would, if I had to come up and I needed a quarterback, I would take Mahomes in the first round, but none of the other quarterbacks I will. I will take Davis Webb in the second round, but none of the other quarterbacks I will. I'm scared on Watson. I like the way that Watson plays, but I think that body of his is too fragile. I mean, you look at what happened with Teddy Bridgewater over there. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater looks like Humpty Dumpty right now. Yeah. I think the same thing's going to happen with Watson. I look at Trubisky and I see a kid that has 13 games of starting experience underneath his belt. To me, I look at him and I see another Jared Goff, and I don't think Jared Goff is ever going to pan out for the Rams. I think that's going to be a wasted pick. You turn around and look at Kaiser and they say, oh, well, Kaiser's got everything. Kaiser looked great in the interviews. You could talk a great game, but I haven't seen a great game of his on the field yet. Have you, John?
No, I know. I'm kind of familiar with him because I worked in Toledo for a while. I know he's from Toledo, so I know some of his family members and friends. I was a little surprised. I was like, wow, that's the same kid. So it's interesting as time goes on. I like you say, what do you see Cleveland doing? I mean, they need a quarterback. Do they reach for a quarterback that high? Do they sign a veteran quarterback? They got to get a quarterback sooner or later, or do they?
If they could get Mike Glennon on the free agent market, that'd probably be a logical choice for them to take a quarterback in the first round, not at number 1. More than likely, they're going to end up with Garrett at number 1. And number 12, I could possibly see them going on Watson because, hey, listen, we're talking about a franchise that's really never gotten anything right since Art Modell bolted out of town. The funny thing is, here everybody's at the combines, and 90% of the quarterback talk is, wait till next year. Downing coming out of USC, the kid up at Washington, Rosen, who I think is probably going to be hanging out with Ryan Leaf before he hangs out on the football field over at UCLA. The Pac-12 is loaded for bear at quarterback. I mean, you get up to Wyoming, and they got Allen is up at Wyoming also. So the West Coast is loaded for bear if you're looking for passes. And if you're looking for passes, you better park yourself on the West Coast next year.
You're listening to the John Harris podcast on the AirNetwork.net. We're speaking to NFL talent guru extraordinaire, Dave T. Thomas. Dave, who, in your book, who was the best player? Who's your number 1 player in this year's draft, regardless of position?
Oh, that's a dumb moment for me because all I got to do is head down and talk with Nick Saban and take his middle linebacker. You know, they talk about Garrett, and I like Garrett. Garrett could be the next Richard Dent, but he could also put a dent into your salary cap for years because this is the type of kid that he'll make 4 or 5 great plays, and then he'll be gone for about a whole quarter. Then he'll come back in and make another 2 or 3 great plays. The inconsistency of Garrett reminds me of Beasley. Now, Beasley really came on strong the second half of the year down at with Atlanta.
Yeah.
But hell, you're talking about a kid that going into the final cuts for the 2016 season, they were looking for somebody to take them off their hands.
Wow.
So when you look at Garrett at that, honestly, if I had to take a down lineman, the one that I want is Solomon Thomas out at Stanford. I look at him and I see another Richard Seymour. Yeah, they talk about he's only 270 pounds, but he could play inside. Look at Aaron Donald with the Rams. The Rams aren't going to throw him back into the fray. That's the type of style that Solomon Thomas brings to the table. If I'm going with a pick, especially my first-round pick, that's got to be a home run. And right now I only see 2 home runs out of the supposed top 10, and that's Solomon Thomas and Reuben Foster.
What do you like about Reuben Foster with Alabama?
He is not only intelligent, he's instinctive. Everything he does, it starts with the top of his head and works its way down. You look around this league right now, and if I had to compare him to anybody, this guy is a larger, more physical, more aggressive version of a Mike Singletary.
Wow. Staying on the college vein for a minute, just throw a local name out there. I know he's not a first-round pick. He has a very interesting story. Pitt running back James Conner. What do you think? What did you think about him before he was diagnosed, with cancer? He's overcome that, had a good season this past year. What do you think about him at the next level?
I like him as an inside running back. I question his receiving ability. I do know that he has been catching the ball a lot more lately last year, but here's what it comes down to, and this is what I say where he's going to get in trouble. When he runs that 40-yard dash, are they going to be on the sidelines going, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi?
Kind of slow, huh?
Listen, before the cancer issue and everything, he ran 4.8 on pro day. You cannot do that in the NFL and get yourself into day 1 or day 2. However, this is a kid that I see coming in the league. Honestly, this is a guy that I would like to stay home. I would like to see the Steelers hand him bus fare and tell him to come into training camp. No knock on Bell, but in this league, you need 2 running backs. Bell goes down. Look what happened in the playoffs. No knock on D'Angelo Williams, but he's no Le'Veon Bell. Now you got Bell out there, you got to slap the franchise tag on this guy. You only got $30-some million to play with on this franchise. You got him out there that you got to put on the franchise. You just gave big money to Antonio Brown. You need help on defense. You need an edge rusher. You definitely could use another outside linebacker, and you need a shutdown cornerback. You don't have the money to do it unless a couple of veterans end up being on the unemployment line in the next couple of weeks.
Let's talk about Bell for a second. 3 straight years now, he has not finished the season for different reasons. How much of a
running
concern,
back, John.
How much of a concern should there be? Should we be concerned or no?
When you're running a guy 25, 30 times a game, you're going to get a couple of dents. No matter how fast your Corvette is, if you're banging into the walls, your fenders are going to start falling off. You need to bring in a back to at least spell him or be out there to at least give you a capable performance if Bell is on the sidelines. Now, Williams was effective on that earlier in the season, but the thing is, it's 2 different style of running backs. Yeah. If I got running back A, I want running back A 2.0 coming in to replace him. Conner is that type of back. Conner is the big back. Conner is the type of back that shows the patience of following his blockers, which will make up for his lack of speed. If you're not going for Conner in this draft, round 4, round 5, you better get up to Wisconsin and take Corey Clement, because I think Corey Clement is probably another big back that you'll still see out there in the mid-rounds. If I had to take a running back in this draft and people are just looking at me like they want to put on the straitjacket, I'm not taking a kid from LSU. I'm going down to Texas. I want Foreman.
The LSU Fournette, for some reason, scares me. He's such a physical runner. I could just see the injury. I mean, I just see injury with him. As good as he is,
3 straight years of ankles, John.
Yeah,
3 straight years with ankle problems. I mean, you got a workhorse like him, and he doesn't have the wheels to get going. That worries me. Okay, they said he showed up at the combines at 240. I'm not concerned with that more. I'm concerned with what's going to happen in the physical. Are there damages in there? Are there bone chips in the ankles? Has he got bone spurs? That's the rumors that we're hearing right now coming out of LSU that, the kid had bone spurs last year. You got to run it back with bone spurs, man. This is a guy that's not going to give you 30 carries a day out there.
Let's go back to Bell on the running game. You sent me some notes about Alexandro Villanueva, the Steelers left tackle, and how effective he was this past year. Let's talk about him a little bit and how Conner could be effective, even though he's running, maybe hopefully sub 5 5.0 40. Talk about what Villanueva did this past year as far as if his effectiveness in the running game.
I think that Villanueva is probably the most underrated left tackle in this game. Incredible on those outside runs. 6.18 yards per carry they gained on their outside runs to the left side. That was not only the best in the league this year, that is a record since we've kept those statistics dating back to 1996. You had Todd Stussy, you had Bryant McKinney, you got Villanueva. I forgot who the other guy was. There was one other guy too. But since 1996, only 4 offensive tackles in this league have seen their running backs average more than 6 yards a pop.
Andy Heck, you told me. Andy Heck.
Andy Heck, yep, with Washington. Hey, thank you, John. You knocked a couple of my cobwebs around. Well, you look at this kid. This kid was a wide receiver in college. Ends up going over to Afghanistan on 3 tours. Comes back. He's still 250 pounds. Philadelphia uses him as a defensive end. All of a sudden, Pittsburgh gets him. Hey, son, let's get you over to the dining room table before we take you to the training room table. Now 325 pounds, they got that left tackle for the next 5-6 years. This is not a Kelvin Beachum, and thank God he's not a Mike Adams.
Mike Adams, one of your favorites from
oh
back
my
in
God!
the day.
Not only, I don't know who I hated more in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform, Mike Adams or Jarvis Jones.
I remember years ago, Dave T. Thomas was telling us on our show with Ike Taylor, do not draft Mike Adams. Everybody was salivating over Mike Adams, and he was telling us he had done the film study, had done the interviews at Ohio State, knew about his work ethic, knew about how he blamed teammates for everything. Begged Steeler fans, begged the Steelers, do not draft this guy. Dave T. Thomas, this guy knows what he's talking about. He correctly predicted that the Steelers would take Shazier, the linebacker out of Ohio State, when nobody was thinking about Shazier. This guy knows it. People talk about Mel Kiper Jr., please. The NFL teams called Dave T. Thomas. Mel Kiper Jr. is calling NFL teams. NFL teams are calling Dave T. Thomas for work, for his advice, for research. This man knows what he's talking about.
And I got a better head of hair, John.
No doubt about that. Hey, let's look at before we get back to the combine and maybe some of the rumors. Let's stay on the Steelers, and we always do this with you. Let's look ahead, talk about their needs, how you see going into it, and let's do a very early mock draft on what you would do if you were Kevin Colbert, Mike Tomlin, how you view the Steelers draft as far as needs.
I look at the Steelers draft that obviously they're going to have to concentrate on the defensive side of the ball. I look at the offense. The offense is really gelling, especially that offensive line. I mean, outside of Villanueva, everybody's signed, and Villanueva's an exclusive right, so he's not going anywhere anyway. The coach that they brought in to develop those offensive linemen has done a fantastic job out there. I think what we got to look for, though, is that they need to get an edge rusher or they need to get an outside linebacker that could put some pressure into the pocket. That will definitely get them going. I think what they need to look for is a cornerback, but a big physical cornerback, and that's why I keep on alluding, folks, down to that kid down in Florida. No, I'm not talking about Tabor. I'm talking about his running mate, Quincy Wilson. That is my top-rated cornerback. Outside of the speed department, everything I see in him, I like Ike. It's a clone of Ike Taylor. And you know one thing, Ike Taylor brought that physicality to that secondary for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that's what they're missing back there. No knock on Ross Cockrell, but Ross is not going to be the guy that's going to cover these speedy merchants going deep.
I'm going to put a knock on Ross Cockrell. He's not one of my favorites, but he's the best they got right now. But like you're saying, they can do better, and they're going to need to do better. If they want to beat New England, they're going to have to do better. They're going, like you said, they're going to have to do better with the edge rusher. They re-signed Methuselah, James Harrison for 2 more years or another year, but you're going to have to do more than that. Like you say, Jarvis Jones probably will not be back. You're going to have to get another edge rusher, another pass rusher. As we saw in the first half of the Super Bowl, the way you get to Tom Brady is with pressure up the middle, but pressure. The Steelers had no pressure on Tom Brady in the AFC Championship game. He sat back and ate a couple sandwiches and it just picked them apart. If they go back and do it again, if they don't get any better, you're going to expect the same thing again next year. Dave, let's go through from 1 to 7 how you see the Steelers draft, how you would pick the Steelers draft?
My Cinderella glass slipper picks for these guys. Round 1, if you find Hassan Reddick, that outside linebacker out there, he is scrappy as all hell. He is the second coming of Levante David. He is the second coming of Derek Brooks. This is a guy that showed down at the Senior Bowl that he is definitely worthy of the second part of round 1 consideration. Now, if you decide not to go for him, you got to take a Troy Polamalu clone. And that's Jabril Peppers out of Michigan. Why? Because you could play him as a cover 2 linebacker. You could play him at strong safety. And if you need to make some changes to your roster to get some money going over there, you got to look at one thing. Mitchell's pulling in over $8 million. When you're pulling in $8.1 million to play safety, and even though he had a great year, that's one guy that I always got to look at if I need to get myself some funds. Now, if I come up in round 2, I got to go for my Ike Taylor clone. Some people are saying that he may go late 1. I think he's going to slip into 2 because a lot of people are going to be going for the pass rushers early. If you find Quincy Wilson sitting out there, that's your left cornerback for the next 10 years. You come up in round 3, you still got to generate pressure. I need a Mike Vrabel type at that spot. I got a 260-pounder at Kansas State named Jordan Willis that simply plays the game like his head is on fire. And he's going to pull 4.6s up at the combines. Now, this is a guy, he's going to be everything that everybody was hoping that Jarvis Jones was. Now, if Willis is gone and the Ohio University kid is there, Terrell Basham, I got to pop on this guy because this was another guy that showed down at the Senior Bowl of what he could do. And why the heck did they spend all that money on a San Diego Charger tight end? I mean, the guy can't even get his head screwed on right.
Yeah.
So I come up in round 3. I find myself a compliment to go with Jesse James, and it's a kid out of Ashland College, former basketball player, 6'7", 280 pounds, runs a 4.5, tight end Adam Shaheen. This is probably the best small college tight end I've seen come out since Shannon Sharp. I come up in round 4. Even though I got a great offensive line, you could never go wrong with additional depth. Finney showed that he could play center or guard, but I want to go out to USC, and I want to get my mama, Damian Mama, 345-pound offensive guard with 5.09 speed. That's what I like to see pulling for Bell down the field. Come up in round 5, I got Bell's caddy sitting right there. Corey Clement out of Wisconsin. 6'3", 230-pound running back. He'll probably pull a 4.5 and change. Then a couple of my sleepers. Got to get a big target for Ben when he wants to go deep. Take a little pressure off of Antonio. I mean, how much longer are they going to go with a Venus de Milo version of Darius Hayward Bay in their lineup? I take Kenny Galladay, the 6'5", 225-pound wide receiver out of Northern Illinois, who also averaged over 7 yards a pop carrying the ball out of the backfield last year. Then I take a kid who may end up having the fastest clocking at the combines this week, and that's going to be the cornerback out of Minnesota, Jalen Myrick. Will Jalen ever start for me? No, I doubt it, but he could make a very good slot cornerback. He's scrappy. He's got 4.24 speed and could return punts and kicks for me.
Wow. You're listening to the John Harris podcast on the airnetwork.net. We've got the great Dave T. Thomas on today as our guest. Dave T., you're doing work now specifically with the New England Patriots and New York Giants. You're privy to a lot of stuff. I know some things you can talk about, some things you can't. Let's talk about what's going on in the league right now, the scuttlebutt, whether at the combine or just between teams. What are you hearing? What should we be looking for?
Well, you're not hearing it yet, but you may hear it closer to draft day, especially since John Lynch is playing Henny Youngman with the number 2 pick. They need a quarterback. New England says we're taking Garoppolo off the board. You know what? You sit out there and you say, is it time for us to all change partners? Garoppolo out to San Francisco so Shanahan could have his franchise quarterback. The number 2 pick to New England, they take Reuben Foster and they make Roger Goodell cringe again when he hands them the Super Bowl 52 trophy next year.
Could you see? I mean, it makes sense to keep him, but if you could get the number 2 overall pick, you got to make that deal if you're New England, right?
They got a sleeper at quarterback. It's a kid who had a horrible year up in Minnesota, and they simply love the guy, and it's Mitch Leidner. They feel they could take him in the 7th round. They're very impressed with what Jacoby Brissett has done for them up there. They think that Brissett could step in and take the role of Garoppolo. And then you got to look at one thing, too. Brian Hoyer is about to go on the market soon. If they need a veteran, Brian Hoyer is familiar with the system that they run over there. That's an ideal pickup if you want to go the veteran route. But if you could get, I know that they were asking first for a 1 and a 2, but if you could get the number 2 pick in the draft for Garoppolo, I'd be driving them out to San Francisco right now.
Could you see the 49ers be, I'm not going to say desperate, but with a new coach, a new general manager, a new look, that this is something really important for them? If they can deliver a quote-unquote franchise quarterback, I mean, maybe it's worth it for them to give up the number 2 overall pick?
Look at the way that Cleveland's front office and the mucky-muck of coaches that they brought in recent years, and look at how much they messed up over there. You got a rookie general manager, a rookie head coach, a lot of rookies on your coaching staff itself. They go 1-15 again. San Francisco's going to burn like they did in 1906.
Now, the reason I want the listeners to understand, when you say these things about potential trades and about players that teams are interested in, you're not just saying that. The thing people need to understand is that you do work for these teams. You evaluate players per their request, or they'll ask you about players, certain college players or NFL players. So you're not just saying, I heard this rumor, my source told me this. A lot of the information you're getting is coming directly from these teams, from these coaches, from these general managers, from these scouts. So I want the listeners to understand that when you, Dave T. Thomas, talk about there's interest from a team in a particular player, it's because that interest has been made known to you in some form or fashion.
Well, the whole thing comes down to when you're sitting out there and going, my sources indicate, that's like acting like Donald Trump saying, believe it, you know everything out of their mouth is nothing but a lie. If I'm going to be talking to you about a player, I'm not going to come out there with a wild rumor unless I got some fact to back it up. It doesn't bode well for my reputation. Like I say, I've been doing this since 1968. So either I'm doing something right out there or I'm the biggest charity case that the NFL has ever had.
But there's a lot of that going on, though, Dave. And again, we're talking to Dave T. Thomas, the great Dave T. Thomas.
That's why I stay away from it, and I only do certain shows out there, John. I don't want to go out there and have to act like a Kuiper or a McShay where you got to say something just for the sake of saying something. When I'm talking about what's going on, what's news. You got to understand one thing. Inside my body is Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. If the NFL doesn't want that, that's fine with me. But the whole thing comes down to is that when I'm sitting down and I'm watching my favorite show, Dragnet, what do they say? Just the facts, ma'am, nothing but the facts.
And the thing is that where we are now with the media, it's not about who's right or wrong, because they don't care, because a week later they come out, they change their draft board, flip-flop it, or I didn't say that, or I missed on 27 of the first-round picks last year. Nobody's held accountable or anything like that. And I think the other thing with you, the way you look at drafts, you look at it over a period of time. You don't look at it first year. You look at it. It takes several years for you before you're really ready to give an A or a B or an F to a team. You don't just jump out of the box and say, that was a horrible draft, that was a good draft. It does take time to evaluate a draft. And you also like the lower picks. You don't necessarily go crazy over the first-round picks. You like the third-round picks, the fourth-round picks.
Oh, I come up around 1, 2, 3, man. I got to hit a home run. When I'm coming up in day 3 of the draft, that's when the scout makes his money. I mean, when you turn over a free agent, well, go back and look at Ike. I mean, nobody even wanted to bring him into the combines. His first workout down there was 6 people. I ended up filming the thing. I sent it out to everybody, and the next thing I know, I had 262 scouts down there the following week.
This is the guy. Remember, Dave T. Thomas discovered Ike Taylor. They're very close.
I discovered Tom Brady, too, so, that's how far I go back. Tom played for me in 3 bowl games. I mean, Lloyd Carr was basically ridden out of town up in Michigan for benching the guy. Had a horrible senior year. He played for me in a blue-gray game, the Japan Bowl, and the Hula Bowl. 2 MVP trophies he went home with.
So this man knows what he's talking about. No, he doesn't have the crazy-looking hair. And no, you don't see him on TV every day, but you can bet your last money, as the late Don Cornelius used to say, that he knows what he's talking about. And you're going to get him on the Air Network as much as we can get him on it, because the information he has is incredible, especially for the Steeler fans out there, Steeler Nation. Keep tuned to the Air Network with Dave T. Thomas. As we get closer to the draft, he's going to break it down more and more. He's going to get more and more into the Steelers' draft needs. We're going to look at his draft. We want his draft board. We want Dave T. Thomas's draft board. His is different. He doesn't predict what each team will take. He tells you what he thinks, who he thinks each team will take, as opposed to just 1 through whatever, the first round. He'll break it down for you and tell you what each team's needs are and what player fits those needs. Dave T., we're getting ready to wrap this up. Any final word? This was an unbelievable show here. We're going to have many more of them, but anything else we should be looking for this week going into as the Combine starts up?
Well, I think the combines are just what it is for itself. Get your medicals, get your interviews done, man. Don't worry about the agility test out there, because you've seen what these guys could do on the football field. The biggest thing this week, though, is what's going to happen when veteran free agency starts. If you look at the positions out there and the positions in this draft, they just don't seem to gel. So either you're going to have to take a young guy or you're going to have to take an old guy, but you're not going to have your choice of either or.
Last question, prediction, Adrian Peterson, where's he going to end up?
I say Adrian Peterson ends up in silver and black.
Really? The Raiders? Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. You've seen everything that's going on. I mean, McKenzie's already said that he expects Murray to end up someplace else. I mean, you come right out on that. Adrian is saying the Giants. He's saying the Raiders. I'm saying it's going to be the Raiders for the simple reason the Giants are so close to the cap, and on top of it, unless they put duct tape on that coach's mouth over there, they're going to get hit with a tampering judge.
Thank you, the great Dave T. Thomas, for coming on this week. We're going to have you on many more times. Thank you for listening to the John Harris Podcast on the airnetwork.net. Have a great week. We'll be talking to you soon.